Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about subjects that project a continuum from our old year's night or New Year's message. Where we spoke about, firstly, defining a vision for ourselves. Defining a vision and projecting a future, setting a vision of where and how we see ourselves in the future. The following Sunday we spoke about, it is one thing to establish a vision for our own selves, but we discussed the concept of helping our children to define for themselves, and of course, nurturing their vision, although they may change along the way, but helping our children define a vision for themselves. We also spoke about the process of manifesting whatever we want, but not just the process, but we spoke about where the manifestation begins, and it begins in silence. Manifestation begins in the space between the thoughts, in the silence between the notes. Manifestation begins in the womb of creation, that is silence. And then last week, we spoke about friendship. And today, we will discuss the concept of spirituality from the perspective of being a duty and an obligation that we have in giving and molding our children's life with that as a value. The deepest desire in every parent has a deep desire, and one of the most innate desires that a parent has is to see that his child or her child becomes successful. We want them to achieve and become more than just achievers. We want them to be happy. It is almost a basic instinct that comes with every mother and father. It is a desire that every child of theirs becomes a success. So how do we do that? How do we invest in our children's success? How do we do that? We send them to school and we give them a good education. I remember always my father and mother would say, when I give you an education, it's not that I expect something for you or from you. I am giving you an education to the best of my ability, and my goal as a parent is to give you more than my parents gave to you. And in giving you this education, I want you to know that when your time comes, you give to your children more than I would have given to you. So we give our children an education geared towards, all aiming towards success. So we educate them. What else do? We teach them how to deal with difficult situations. We teach them how to compete. We teach them how to persist in the midst of disappointment. We teach them how to defend themselves, especially in a society like now. It is almost imperative. So we give our children and we invest all these things, education, defense. We teach them how to deal with disappointment. As a matter of fact, we teach them how to behave in a particular way so that they earn our approval. Isn't that so? We want our children to behave in a particular way so that they gain and they earn our approval. But all these things are great. All these investments into our children are great. But we owe it to our children. We have a greater obligation towards our children, and that obligation, it is to give them that which balances all that we would have given them before. And that obligation, it is to give them, to grow them, to nurture them in a life of spirituality. You see, is there anyone here this morning who thinks that believing in God is a bad thing? Every one of us here this morning are here. One of the reasons is because we know that having a belief system, whatever that belief system is, just having a belief system in a power higher than ourselves, whether we call that power God, whether we call that Param Atma, whether we call that Force Universe, we call that Krishna, Allah, the Father of Christ, it matters not what we call. But all congregations, or all people who follow a congregation, there is a fundamental belief that it is good to believe in God. But there is a disconnect, there is a disjoint, there is a separation as we live our lives in helping our children to understand that having an education, knowing how to defend yourself, knowing how to behave in a particular way, and all these other investments help us to give our children money. We help them to gain acquisitions in life and positions. All the abundance in the material things will come. But those things, we all agree, do not bring or guarantee happiness. Those things do not guarantee success. Remember the examples in the United States? Where the first 10 billionaires, multi-billionaires in the United States, belonging in the oil industry and the iron and steel industry and the banking and investment industry, out of the 10 billionaires who existed in the United States of America, at least 5 of them committed suicide. They didn't die by accident or illness or natural causes. They inflicted death upon themselves. So if having an education and knowing all the amenities of gaining the physical and material attributes of life is a guarantee of success, then why do these people who would have had everything and anything that money could have bought committed and took their lives by their own will? You see, there is something else that we have as an obligation to our children to give them so that we can guarantee their success in life. We have an obligation to teach our children the ability to love, to have compassion, to feel joy, but more than just feel joy, to spread that joy to other people. We have an obligation to give our children a sense of purpose for their life. And more than that, we have an obligation to help them to connect with and understand their relationship with this universe that we call God. Today, I would like to remind you, devotees, that there is something that starts with conception. The minute the mother conceives, the obligation as a parent begins. Because the process of teaching our children starts the minute that there is life created within the womb. In Tulsidas' Ramayana, there were at least 2 instances that spoke about the introduction of ourselves. When the Lord Sri Ram and Lakshmana met with Hanumanji for the first time in the Kiskinda forest, the introduction was not, "Hello, I am Ram and this is my brother Lakshman." It was, "I am the son of Dashrath, the king of Ayodhya, whose name happens to be Ram," and then Lakshman. He introduced himself as a descendant of the parent, the lineage. There was value in saying which kul lineage you came from. There was value in talking about your kul lineage. When the individual met, the name of that, Sutikshan. When Sutikshan met with Rama in the forest for the first time, he introduced himself. He says, "I am not Sutikshan," but he said, "I am the student," and he called his guru's name. "I am the student of that guru who happens to be given the name of Sutikshan." You see, there is a value system in the kul, the lineage, this descendant, that those traditions that are handed down to us, there is value in all of these. So today, when we think of our responsibility as parents, think of 5, this morning I would like to give you 5 different suggestions or 5 guidelines that reminds us about our responsibilities as parents. The very first suggestion that we should give to our children, that we should mold and inculcate into our children's life, it is this: we should teach them that everything is possible. Do you believe as a parent that everything is possible? Do you think that in your life that every and anything is possible? You see, one of the skills that they don't teach us in school, it is how to become a parent. One of the skills that they do not teach us in school, it is how to teach our children or give our children a life of spirituality. And for many of us, including the pundits and the realized masters in this world, we do not have all that is required. But in the process of parenting, we should learn the skills of giving children this value of spirituality. And the very first practical way of teaching our children or giving them spirituality in their lives, it is to teach them that everything is possible